So that's great. So thank you. So we got the translator on the phone and we're so happy. We're getting a good assessment of what's going on. And in fact, the patient doesn't have chest pain. They have a fever and a cough. And now I'm worried, oh my gosh, this patient might have COVID. Where do I send this patient for a COVID test, or where do I send them to have an assessment? Because at the moment, I know I can't see them in my clinic. So can you show me where you might go?
No. So right now we've grouped telemedicine and COVID information in the same locale on the same board here. And so under COVID community resources, in this subgroup here, we have this board here. It has information about COVID hot clinics or testing sites for staff, and also it has info for patients and community resources. And so you could find info in this board as well, or down along here. All of this has COVID and directives all along on this board. So depending on what you were looking for, you could find the information.
Now I have to fess up that this is probably not quite up to date with the last stuff from COVID, but just to show you that we were trying to keep it all in one place for people so that they could access it. If you're on here and you see that something we have up here is out of date, like I noticed the COVID clinic stuff is out of date and may change again in the next few weeks as COVID clinics, hot clinics start closing. We'll try to keep it updated, but if you see it's not, please send either me or Dr. Rubenstein a note and just identify that so we can work on it. Does anybody have any questions about this board? And if part of the fun is just showing you, and while you're watching, you can see what kinds of stuff is there maybe you didn't know about. So part of getting familiar with these boards is just going into them and seeing what information is there. Let's do one last case and then we'll just have a few minutes for last questions and we'll be able to finish a bit early. So here's the last case I wanted to, oh, sorry, is there a question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Helen?
Yeah, so it was just, it'd be interesting that when we're using the translation services to know the costs that are associated with it. Mm-hmm. When we have a translator in our office, I think they're paid $25 an hour and they're paid for a minimum of 2 hours. Mm-hmm. When we have a translator online with Rio, it's a fee per minute. And so, which I think is paid for by the CLSC. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I think that when we're calling these people, trying to have all of our information ready to do the translation, like use them as much as we can, but not keep them waiting for 20 minutes while we're doing an assessment because the meter's running while we're doing that.
Thanks for that. Helen, if you know what the cost is of the Rio per minute, we could definitely post it there. I don't have that information. Do you
okay, we have received an email. I'm sure Bernadette would have it.
Okay. So we'll
it's not very expensive, but it's like like $1 something a minute, I think.
Yeah. So
and just for the fun of it, sometimes you're talking to someone, you're saying, oh, is it cold where you are? And they're talking to you from Texas, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Rio translation service, honestly, it's such a gift for us at the CLC Côte de Neige because we do have so many people who come who have language barriers. And that service, Rio, has like more than 55 languages that they can get on the phone for us. So just for people to be aware of it, and if we get the information about the cost, we'll post it there. Just, I think it is, you are correct that it's nice for us as physicians to also know the cost of what we're doing.
Right. So for the new residents, the oncoming residents also, it's always to explain to patients that the translators that we have, that we access through Rio or through the CLSC services are professionals and they're bound to confidentiality. So it's really important to explain that to patients because sometimes patients are worried that if they talk to someone from their own community, what they're talking about may get out there. Mm-hmm. And so reassure your patients that when we're dealing with these translators over the phone, they've signed contracts and everything is confidential.
Thank you. Let's do one more case, and then I'm going to ask if people have any other last questions. The case I'm thinking about, which happens a lot here, Katie, is that we have a lot of diabetic patients. So I'm thinking about a 55-year-old diabetic patient who comes in sick with a gastro. And as a doctor, I know there's a resource about like what to do when people are sick with diabetes. And I'm thinking, where would I look for that? And then also, once I've figured out what I'm doing, is there something available for the patient to help them manage when they're having a sick day, like having a gastro?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so first, if we're in family medicine articles and we want to brush up on our own knowledge of that, I'd probably go back here. I'm going to put this, for me, it's easiest alphabetically. So I'm going to go to endocrinology here and go to diabetes here and see if I can find the website in guidelines. Here we go. And also the nice thing about the control or the Windows button and the F button on your keyboard is it also works for articles that you're in. So you can press that and search up vomiting, and it will find it in the article that you're looking at on the PDF. And so if you were looking for someone that had diabetes that came in sick, you could find it in that article in the guidelines. And so here's the guideline, and you found it. How to keep your patients safe when they're at risk of dehydration from vomiting or diarrhea. And so here you know, okay, this is what you do. So now you know for yourself as a physician, this is what we need to do. And now if you want to get a resource for the patient, we can go back to our patient resources and find something for them. And so that would also be in the endocrinology here. Here we go. Oh, it's having trouble loading. Nope. Here, I'm gonna find it on this board. Right. Sorry, the internet here is struggling. Here we go. So same thing, I'll look for, let's say I'm looking for vomiting. That's what I'm looking for. So here's sick days information. So we're gonna click on that. And here are all the resources that we have here. So the same thing that we saw in our guidelines, the SADMANs, I don't know, the acronym that we had there, we have a sheet for them. So here's like a PDF here. This is more a picture, but we also have a link. They can take you to a website and they can count, you can print this, the plan for them. And there was one in English and one in French as well. And so this is a nice resource that you can have printed for them. So those are the two, kind of the two sides of it. So something for you as a physician, and then there's something for the patient as well on the two boards.
Okay, so I think those are our cases. Does anybody want to, okay, those are cases I thought about ahead of time. Does anybody want to throw another case out for Katie just to walk around the board? Or do you have a question for her about any problems you've encountered using this resource? So one of the things while you're thinking about that, Helen's said just thank you. She hasn't looked at this in a while and she appreciates this as a resource. And I do want to thank Katie a lot for the efforts she's put in here. And I also want to give a shout out to Heather Rubenstein, who really helps to keep these boards updated with academic articles for the blue boards on the Family Med portal. I would just encourage people now that you take a look at these boards and that you start using them. And I'd also encourage you that if you have resources that you really like, that you use clinically with patients, or an article as a teacher that you're using that you think, you know, I really like to give that article out to residents when we talk about this issue. If you send those articles to us, we will put them on the boards. And we've tried to sort them in a way that we think about these problems medically by system. But if you're looking and it's not making sense to you, or there's a place where you would put it, then tell us too. Like, we're happy to, these boards are meant to be a collective resource and meant to benefit us all. So please feel free to give us feedback. Okay. All right, if nobody has any other questions, I give one last chance for questions to the creator. And if we have no more questions in the next 1 or 2 minutes, then we'll say goodbye for M&M and L rounds, and we'll be happy to come back and talk about this again. Heather, yes.
Kathy, just to say that sometimes we post the same article in 2 different places, thinking that thinking ahead that maybe that's how you're going to access it. So sometimes we'll put it in 2 different places. So that will solve that problem where you're not sure exactly where the article is.
So that's exactly right. So thank you for mentioning that, Heather. Like, we try to put it where we think it should go, but sometimes we're like, oh no, somebody might think about that in a different way and access it through a different board. So we have posted some things in multiple places. And if you're looking for it and it's not in the place you think it should be, tell us. We're happy to move things around. Does anybody else want to make a comment? I'd be curious for the new people, obviously maybe haven't had a chance to use it, but anybody who's used this before, let's do, maybe we could do that for 1 second. What if you could just open your mic and tell us what on here you use? Because that's also helpful for us to know what people are going to for now. And then maybe we can look at ways to help people find other information that's not being accessed well. Helen Rousseau, what do you use, or what do you want to
So honestly, I hadn't used the articles because I thought they were just guidelines, but I can see that I can get a lot out of them. I've been using a lot of the printouts, especially for the MSK. I don't know if the Epley maneuver is on there, because I think I've looked for it and I haven't found it, because it's something that I would, maybe Katie could just look if the Epley maneuver is, no, that wouldn't be under MSK, it would be neurological.
Maybe. So let's look. Let's just look right now, Helen, because I know
Should be under ENT if it's there.
might be.
Right, but I think I've looked for it and I didn't find it. And I think it's one that would be really useful. Maybe I wasn't so good at looking for it because it's something,
So we have this one. This is the one I was going to tell you about, Helen. We've put up the Carol Foster video, not the Epley. And I did that just because nobody else asked for the Epley. And I personally find the Carol Foster video on treatment of vertigo much simpler for patients to understand. But It does the same kind of a thing, and it's a video. So that's posted there on the patient ed. Do you want to go back, Katie, aboard to just show her where that is? So the workspace that you got there through ENT.
So it's ENT, and then it's just under this.
okay.
But Helen, if you have a good, we'll look for an Epley's, but if you have a good patient handout that you know about, send it to us. Like, we'll post it there. They're great. That's a great idea.